On the eve of Al-Quds Day 2021, which falls on the last Friday of the holy month of Ramadan, Al-Quds appears on the cusp of an important transformation that will break the stagnation that has hit the Palestinian revolutionary street since the start of the corona pandemic. As the Israeli incursions into the Al-Aqsa Mosque intensifies, with Jewish extremists taking the lead in those incursions with increasing numbers reaching hundreds a week, sparks of Palestinian protests and marches ignited the streets of Old Jerusalem since the beginning of the holy month of Ramadan. However, the peak was last week's mobilization of illegal colonial settlers aiming to break the Palestinian youth gathering during nighttime at Bab al-Amud, one of the main gates of the old city of Jerusalem. As a result, the Palestinian youths exploded in a majestic scene to a point that the settlers, who were armed to their teeth, could not hold in the face of Palestinian anger. Even the attempt to close the mosque in front of the worshippers failed, as more than 70,000 native Palestinians showed up to attend prayers at Al-Aqsa Mosque. Those who could not reach the mosque surrounded the old city with prayers in front of the Israeli occupation soldiers. Things could not look worse for the occupation as we approach the International Al-Quds Day later this week. Israel fears this day every year as people around the world, Muslims and non-Muslims, come together to demonstrate their support for the oppressed Palestinians who have been living under the Israeli occupation for 73 years. Imam Khomeini, the founder and late leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, marked International Al-Quds Day in 1979, aiming to keep Al-Quds in the hearts and minds of all Muslims worldwide who march to proclaim their support of the free nation of Palestine. 42 years later, Al-Quds remains steadfast as it was on the first day the British forces accompanied Zionist extremist mercenaries to occupy the Holy Arabian city. Whether through massive rallies inside the occupied city, defensive retaliatory missiles from Gaza in support of their Jerusalemite brothers, or acts of boycott by the rest of the world, Al-Quds Day unites us all for the sole purpose of liberating Palestine. Welcome to the Mideastream. I'm Marwa Osman. Al-Quds Day is not a day to celebrate a city in occupied Palestine. It is the last Friday in the holy month of Ramadan, launched by the leader of the revolution, Ayatollah Ruhollah Al Khomeini, to reiterate that the issue of Al-Quds Al-Sharif is the core of the Palestinian cause. It is a day for every free soul to acknowledge that the only just solution for the perpetual conflict between Arabs and the Zionist illegal Israel is the ending of the occupation and the return of the city of Al-Quds to Palestinian sovereignty as the capital of the state of Palestine. To discuss this issue with us from Beirut is Mr. Omar Nashabi, political writer and commentator. Thank you for being with us. Dr. Nashabi, now International Quds Day is seen as the legacy of the late founder of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Imam Ruhollah Al Khomeini, back in 1997, shortly after leading an Islamic revolution which toppled the Shah of Iran. He named the last Friday of Ramadan as the International Al-Quds Day. How do you think Palestine has benefited from this day?
Well, thank you very much for having me on the show, and Ramadan Kareem. Yes, I think that, the fact that the last Friday of this holy month of Ramadan is proclaimed by Imam Khomeini as Quds Day is a reminder to the whole world of this cause, this just cause of the Palestinian people to get back what belongs to them. And it is against this violation of fundamental rights and principles. And this is a call that keeps the cause alive at a time when the whole world is turning its back on Palestine. So this is a holy month for all Muslims and all Arabs and all people concerned with this issue. This wasn't a call for a specific group. It was a call for international solidarity with the Palestinian people in their struggle for basic rights and in facing Israel that has violated so many of the international laws and so many of the international resolutions that are about the basic rights of Palestinians.
And you think they have benefited from this day so far?
Yes, definitely, because it has brought back every time of the year on the last Friday of Ramadan, Muslims all over the world, get together to actually call for justice in Palestine, and that is an international coalition or an international solidarity that is essential to keep this cause alive in order to bring justice to the people of Palestine and to Muslims all around the world. This is the Jerusalem, Al-Quds is a holy place for all Muslims and Christians all around the world. And that is why to actually talk about it and come together at this time of the year, at this month, this holy month when the Quran came from the angel to the Prophet Muhammad, is an important time for all Muslims everywhere.
Well, Dr. Nashabi, in recent weeks, we did see that the Israeli occupation forces increased their aggression against the native Palestinians, especially in occupied Al-Quds, where we saw a lot of protests from the Palestinians against the Israelis, that is. But also we saw a lot of settler provocations chanting death to Arabs and other provocative chants. How do you assess the silence of the international community, on top of which is the United Nations silence on such incremental genocide against the native Palestinians?
Well, I think the settlers and the Israeli regime and the Zionists are profiting from the fact that there is an international crisis currently with Corona, with economic difficulties. The United Nations is preoccupied with other issues that are issues of basic health, with the spread of the virus and how to secure the vaccine. The Arab world is preoccupied with the issues of, after the Emirates signed this agreement with the Israelis. They are going to naturalization of relations with Israel. So I think the actual settlers and the Zionists have profited from this regional situation, international situation, to increase their attacks on Palestinians and expand their occupation of neighborhoods inside East Jerusalem. And this is what they have been doing. They have been throwing Palestinian families out of their homes, out of their neighborhoods, and they've been taking their homes. And everybody can see that in the social media and in the media coverage, despite the fact that the media coverage is limited, but no one is doing anything about it. And that will encourage them to actually increase their occupation.
Well, to make things just worse, we had the occupation forces pave the way for the extremist far-right Jews to stage the anti-Arab marches that I told you about. But there's something that's very important that happened in Al-Quds, in occupied Al-Quds, and then we saw some certain factor of retaliation coming from Gaza at the same time. Gaza started retaliatory attacks to try and also support their brothers in Jerusalem. What are your current prospects toward an ignition of another intifada if this just continues? We have Sheikh al-Jarrah, we have the Al-Quds protests, we have Gaza.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have a feeling that there are elements within the Palestinian Authority that are acting as agents for some Arab states and some Arab nations that have signed a deal with Israel. And their function and their job is to put down any Palestinian sentiment and the organization to actually launch a new intifada. However, the Palestinian people and the violation of their basic right cannot stop them from rebelling against this oppression. And I think that, and I hope that the Palestinian people in the West Bank and in Gaza will reunite their efforts, and they will take to the streets again, because there are things that are unbearable. I mean, even if you actually do whatever effort to stop the people from saying no to occupation, you will not be successful, despite the fact that, for example, the elections have been taken to another date. They have been postponed, and that is really not to the benefit of the Palestinians. The Palestinian people, I think, are feeling that they are alone in this struggle, and they are moving forward, and I think they are organizing their ranks. However, in some places they are desperate. The whole world has abandoned them, except some nations like the Islamic Republic of Iran and Syria and Lebanon, whereas the rest of the world that used to, at least only in words in the past, the Arab League used to show solidarity with the Palestinian people. Now it's not only, not even in words. There's no sign of any solidarity with these people. They are left alone.
Exactly. This is how the Palestinians are feeling inside of the occupied Palestine or the occupied Palestinian territory. But this is the first year when we have Al-Quds Day, where we have also Arab normalization with the Israeli entity. Everyone is turning a blind eye, just like you said, to the sufferings of the Palestinians, whether inside or outside. There are people outside who want to return to their ancestors' land, to their land, but still, it's not possible because of this normalization now.
And I have to add, if I may,
this normalization would actually affect the essence of Al-Quds Day?
Yes, I want to add a remark that some Arab states they say that they have a problem with the Islamic Republic of Iran, and they consider that their problem with the Islamic Republic of Iran will make them move away from the central issue that is Jerusalem. This is just a pretext for not doing their moral duties to stand by the Palestinians. They take a pretext that that the Islamic Republic of Iran is holding the cause of Palestine as a primary cause. Hence, they do not want to actually take that cause into consideration. That is a ridiculous justification for their continuous treason of the central issue that is the Palestinian issue. That is the violation of Palestinian and Arab, Islamic and Christian rights in Palestine. And that has been going on for a long time. And now it has culminated with this naturalization. I think the last Friday of the month of Ramadan is an opportunity for all Arabs and all Muslims and all people around the world to show that the issue of Palestine is an issue of basic right. It has nothing to do with the
This is what the Palestinians, Dr. Nashabi, are doing and continue to do, despite the fact that they are suffering and their sufferings might not be heard by a lot of Arab states, but they continue with the resistance, and that's the most important factor to liberate, hopefully, Palestine. Thank you very much for being with us to discuss the upcoming International Al-Quds Day. Dr. Omar Nashabi, political writer and commentator from Beirut. Please stay tuned. We will be talking next about the upcoming liberation of Ma'rib. The Yemeni armed forces and the popular committees continue their accelerated advance in the northern governorate of Ma'rib, where the US-led Saudi coalition of aggression against Yemen is facing a major dilemma as a result of their failure to halt the advancement of the Yemeni resistance. Meanwhile, the death of a large number of leaders of the forces loyal to Abdrabbu Mansour Hadi during the past 2 weeks on the front lines of Ma'rib exacerbated accusations of treason inside the Saudi Emirati coalition camp. More details in this following report. The former and current US administration, in cooperation with Israel, the Saudi royal family, the UAE, Sudan, Turkey, and Daesh mercenaries, mobilized more than 30,000 armed men and supplied them with the latest weapons, and entrusted the Minister of Defense of Hadi and Saudi officers to lead the battle to keep Ma'rib under Saudi occupation. But why Ma'rib exactly? Ma'rib is important for its strategic location on the border with Saudi Arabia. It is an important water hub for Yemen and a large source of oil and gas income for Yemen. That is why we see the US-led Saudi aggression pushing towards the Battle of Ma'rib. For its liberation means the first breath Yemen takes after 6 years of deliberate suffocation. Finalizing the Battle of Ma'rib could have been accomplished by the Yemeni resistance forces some time ago, but the quick control of Ma'rib would not have ended the roles of Saudi leaders and members of terrorist organizations in the governorate. they would have just fled to other governorates to continue their terrorist war on Yemen. This understanding of the slow progression in resolving the Battle of Ma'rib leads to a better evaluation of the special operations that the army forces and the joint committees have resorted to during the past week. The Yemeni armed forces and the resistance selected specific targets of importance, including gathering points of invaders and mercenary forces. Observers believe that the Yemeni resistance was able to implement its will due to innovation and strategic planning for the battle. Today, neither the Air Force is able to control the battle, nor the rush of many Al-Qaeda mercenaries to the front lines to provide a safe withdrawal of the Hadi forces. Meanwhile, Mohammed bin Salman's statements about ceasefire negotiations and the Arabism of Sayyid Abdul Malik al-Houthi means that the Saudi army is in a state of defeat and fragmentation due to the grave losses in Ma'rib, as well as the inability of the Saudi army to at least defend the Saudi-Yemeni border. Mohammed bin Salman's embellished speeches about Arabism, Islam, and negotiations come from his media advisors who have so far proven their failure, whether in promoting his unjustified aggression against Yemen or in saving face by trying to end it. To discuss this issue with us from Beirut is Mr. Ali Murad, who's a political commentator. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Ali. Now, Ma'rib seems to have become a very important military shift in the balance of power between the US-led Saudi aggression against Yemen and the Yemeni resistance on the other hand, especially that US efforts are underway to try and halt any progress for the Yemeni resistance and the armed forces. How do you perceive the recent developments on the ground in Ma'rib will change this balance of power?
Thank you for hosting me.
My pleasure.
Of course, Ma'rib is an important city, just not because it's close to Sana'a, but because it's the last stronghold of the US Saudi-led coalition waging its war on Yemen. Because if you take a look at the map, you will see that in northern Yemen, there is only Ma'rib kept to be liberated. So it's important for Sana'a, and it's important also for Saudi Arabia and also Al-Islah Party, because it's the stronghold for Al-Islah Party. There is also some important strategic facilities to the east of Ma'rib. You got the oil and gas facilities. So if Sana'a controls completely Ma'rib and puts its hand on the oil and gas facilities, then they will have more electricity, they will have more power, they will have some features and services to provide to the 20 million population in northern Yemen. That means that Saudi Arabia would not be able to use the paper of the shipments, the oil shipments, and all the gas and oil that is necessary for the lives of those 20 million Yemenis. So it's important for both sides. I believe that the Sana'a government wants to have full control on Ma'rib gradually, and not by all forces in, because they know there is a tribal situation in Ma'rib that Ansarullah want to keep their relations with them in the coming future, because it's important for the future of Yemen. We are not talking about a completely military battle taking place in Ma'rib. It's also a social and a political battle that Sana'a is winning so far.
You're saying that the Yemeni resistance basically wants to keep its relations up with the clans and the tribes and not have blood separate between them for the future of Yemen. But what is worth mentioning here is the recent death of the Director of Officers Affairs as well as the Director of the Military Judiciary Department in the so-called Hadi forces, in addition to the death of many other Saudi generals as well. In this strategic and military sense, how do you interpret the presence of first-rank officers and generals at at the front lines of Ma'rib losing their lives under the command of Mohammed bin Salman's coalition of aggression?
Of course, Mohammed bin Salman is treating Ma'rib as his last stronghold. If he loses Ma'rib, then he will be declared as a loser in Yemen, a formal loser in Yemen. Because if you take a look to the south, actually Saudi Arabia doesn't have any influence kept in the south.
It's rather the UAE.
Yes, exactly, to the Emiratis through their militias and the so-called, the elite brigades and the Giants brigades. All those names, they are controlled by Abu Dhabi. And actually, Saudi Arabia doesn't have any influence and power in the south. If Ma'rib is fallen into the hands of Ansarullah and the government in Sana'a, then Mohammed bin Salman has nothing kept to stand on in Yemen. So I think that he is desperate. That's why he is pushing his generals and also the generals of the so-called Yemeni army aligned to Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi and Al-Islah Party. It's a carnage. It's a carnage. They are killing their generals for no purpose actually, because they know they are losing the ground and they are losing the tribes, and this is the most important thing than losing grounds.
And this is what actually the Yemeni resistance is investing in. They are investing in them losing the tribes, yes, and them, the Yemeni Sana'a government winning it. But let us discuss a bit the statement of Mohammed bin Salman that happened like a week ago. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, where he considered Sayyid Abdul Malik al-Houthi as a Yemeni and an Arab. Wallah, thank you very much. And that he wished to sit with him at the negotiation table. I personally read that as a clear Saudi defeat. How do you decipher Mohammed bin Salman's statements?
I agree with you completely, because if Mohammed bin Salman had won his battles on the ground, he wouldn't speak this way when talking about Sayyid Abdul Malik al-Houthi. Of course, because he is defeated, he is using this soft tone and he is offering talks and dialogue. I think his main purpose now is to stop the Battle of Ma'rib. He wants to reach an agreement just like the agreement of Al-Hudaydah, which was signed in 2019 in Sweden. And by the way, the Saudi part,
they didn't abide by the agreement at all.
That's why they are trying to repeat the process by reaching an agreement for Ma'rib, and they will not abide by in the future. But I think that Sana'a is aware about this scheme, and I think they are completely clear. They said from the end, no talks, no peace, unless you stop your air raids, your bombings, and also you lift the siege, which is more important, I think, than all the military battles taking place
in order for that to happen, we just have less than a minute now. In order for that to happen, what do you think is a plausible and real option for everyone here in order to get rid at least of the humanitarian crisis and just break that blockade?
I think that the Americans, in the first place, they have to be straight. The Biden administration is beating about the bush. They are making games. Lender King is saying openly that his main purpose is to stop the Battle of Ma'rib. They are using the humanitarian issue as a paper of war, as a means of war. So I think the United States and Saudi Arabia, they have to make their minds. Do they want this war to proceed, to continue? They claim that they want to end it, but on the grounds, the opposite is what we see.
Well, we have to wait and see then what happens, especially basically after the end of Ramadan, the holy month of Ramadan, because this is how things are being shown on the ground, that the Yemeni resistance might have something very important when Eid comes over. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Ali Murad, political commentator, to discuss how the Yemeni resistance is fighting to liberate Ma'rib. Now, thank you for being with us, and please stay tuned next week for more from the Mideastream.